What is going on, everybody? With Diablo 4 first season just around the corner, some of you might be curious about trying new classes. I have leveled up all Diablo 4 classes to 50 on hardcore and want to share my experience and compare all the classes to each other in the early game. So maybe it can help you to choose class for upcoming season 1. Before I dive into the classes, let me set some context. First, I played all the classes with close to no knowledge about the builds, and it was intentional. I wanted to share my unbiased thoughts on what the skill tree provides and how fun is it to build the class. Second, I never tried to fish for specific items for the build. 1 to 50 stretch is too short for that. This means builds are 95% driven by skill trees, rather than anything else. Exception is defensive legendary aspects. At the end of the day it is hardcore, but I only use generic ones for all classes. In particular, aspect of Protector, the best defensive aspect for early game, and aspect of Disobedience, the best defensive aspect in the game, full stop. And third, if you love your class thematically, don't worry about anything I will say here. This video is just to give a full picture, not to insult people who play certain classes. My personal favorite was, is, and will be Barbarian. Even this class will be nerfed to the ground. Speaking of Barbarians, I will go through classes left to right as they sitting around the campfire, so let us begin. As I already said, Barbarian is my main. I have the most experience with this class. I finished campaign on World Tier 2 on Hardcore with this class, what is actually not recommended. Pick World Tier 1 for campaign on Hardcore if you want to have a good time. I farmed all renown with this class. I died a couple of times on higher levels because of my own stupidity, so I went through the 1 to 50 path more than once. So, how good is Barbarian? On the power level side, I would actually say Barbarian is okay in early game. I know lots of people saying that in early game Barbarians are not very good, but I actually disagree with this assessment. Yes, damage output and clear speed is definitely on the low side, but Barbarian is tough as a nail. Most of his toughness is coming from the skill tree, so even with inferior gear, playing Barbarian, you will be able to take damage and walk away, when for other classes it would mean creating a new character. It is important to understand that being able to take a hit does not directly translate to survivability. Other classes achieve it through other means like mobility or crowd control, but it is the most reliable way, and it is what is valued on hardcore. Playing Barbarian is like sailing on an icebreaker, slow but absolutely relentless. Moving to Barbarian skill tree, while it provides loads of survivability options, unfortunately it is very limiting and not opening a good variety of the builds in early game. The issue is hidden in the lower half of the tree. Ground Stomp and all brawling skills may sound cool, however the interactions between those are hidden in items and legendary aspects, which makes usage of those suboptimal in early game, since we are not relying on items. Meanwhile, synergy between shouts is right there in the tree. I tried different combinations in the early game, but I always came back to using at least 2 shouts no matter what. And to be clear, I don't think you have to play meta build. If the build is 90 or even 80% power of the top build, it allows the gameplay I enjoy more. This is the build alright for me. But if you are not using at least 2 shouts in your early game build, this is more like half of top build's power. And well, you have to draw the line somewhere. So let me explain how 99% Barbarian early builds go on hardcore. Your 2 slots are occupied with shouts, then 1 slot is for Iron Skin. You may ditch it mid-end game, where you get enough survivability from Paragon board and items. But playing early on hardcore without it is a death wish. Then you have your big red button ultimate. Honestly, whichever you choose doesn't make much more difference in the early game. Or you can do what I did and go triple shout and Iron Skin for extra safety, but it just makes the gameplay even more boring, so I don't really count it as a variety. Then we have the last two slots for basic and core skills. All Barbarian basic skills are absolute wet noodles, and it truly does not make a massive difference in gameplay which one you choose, maybe with the exception of Lunging Strike that gives you a bit of mobility. Core skills are pretty good, but without itemization in early game, they really end up in three categories. Double Swing that no one uses. By the way, if you have the build that successfully uses it, let me know, I'm here to try. Whirlwind that can be channeled, and then everything else. Hammer, Upheaval, and Rend, they all feel and play relatively the same in the early game. Real difference between those comes with itemization and ability to open slots for other skills like Rupture. And here's the kicker. Whirlwind does not work in the early game. To spin properly, you need good resource management and enemies density, and none of those are present yet. So you end up with one of three very similar core skills. All of this plus terrible Barb's resource management in early game ends up in a pretty dull gameplay. It looks like this. You scream at your enemies, you throw your wet noodle basic skills into them till you have enough fury, you use your big boy core attack. You occasionally press the panic button when you are in danger, or a big red button to erase elites, if you have one. Rinse and repeat. I swear to you, this is how any Barbarian plays in early game on hardcore. Move one step from this framework and your effectiveness drops from the cliff. To sum up, slow leveling, no variety in builds, dull gameplay. I don't think superior survivability can save it. Barbarian as a class opens up later, and I think it becomes really fun, but if you get one as an alt, get ready for a long and boring 1 to 50 experience. Some tips if you decide to play Barbarian on hardcore. Get Iron Skin as soon as possible, this is your life-saving skill. Passive for max HP is also very important and will save you from many one-shots, so take this one as a priority. Next priority will be fortification. It plays a huge part in the Barbarian's defense. Ensure you have any kind of bleed in your build, it is extremely important to stack aspect of disobedience. And patience. You will need it. Moving next, we have a Necromancer. Necromancer was the third class I was leveling 1 to 50 after Barbarian and Sorceress. So I started to get a bit tired, but fortunately class managed to show something different and the overall experience was quite enjoyable. I started with an attempt to build a minion master because, come on, it's a Necromancer. It went okay at the beginning, then on level 13 I went to the stronghold to open up my usual farming dungeon for an early game, Annika's Claim. Killing the elites was a bit tough, but nothing too scary, and then I went to the boss and he clapped me. He one-shot all my skeletons. After that I had nothing on him. I couldn't create enough corpses, I could not leave the arena, and Scroll of Escape can't be used before level 20, so this was the end of my first character. As I started the second one, I tried builds with no minions. In particular, I tried Bone Spear and Blood Nova builds. Short story, I didn't like any of those. I see how those can work later, but not in early game. Bone Spear without minions is way too squishy, and Blood Nova requires better density. And density is not present till World Tier 3. So I went back to a slightly tweaked minion master build. I decided to wait till level 15 before I go to the stronghold, so I have skeleton mages and it made all the difference. I can't say the fight was easy, but it was okay. After that, everything sailed smoothly. Necromancer has quite a good clear speed. Survivability and mobility is a bit of a concern for Necro, but thankfully meat shields of minions help to compensate for it in most cases. The problem came in when I started to push content to a higher level than I was. Usually I do capstone on level 47 and next 3 levels I'm going to World Tier 3, which means I'm 6 levels behind. Capstone itself was not a problem, but when I went to World Tier 3, it was hard. It feels like Necromancer needs some certain critical mass of corpses, and then his damage starts ramping up like crazy. But as soon as you can't kill enemies fast enough, you don't reach this critical mass and your damage output falls off the cliff, and life gets difficult. Less corpses equals less corpse explosions equals worse resource management equals even less corpses equals can't kill skeletons equals reapers die equals even less corpses. You get the point. Also, even though I played minions, I still had Bone Spear as a core skill, and I usually stayed far from the battle between mobs and my minions. This strategy worked well till I started facing champions, the guys with purple glowing that provide defense. Those guys staying off the screen and not letting me kill anything, and screwing corpse generation were kind of a bummer. But as I was approaching level 50 and the level difference became less, problems seemingly started to go away. Anyway, let's talk about skill tree. Don't get me wrong, it is definitely much better compared to the Barbarian skill tree in the beginning. There are more interactions between different skills and different branches built into the tree itself. For example, if you play Minion Master, you can go with Shadow skills to help generate corpses as an obvious choice, or you can go Blood and later use Blood Orbs to add even more survivability to your minions, or you can go Bone to get rid of elites fast while your minions are dealing with trash. The problem is that skills vary in power by quite a margin. Bone Spear, for example, is the blessing and the curse. It is dealing insane damage from the start, applies vulnerable, and doesn't cost much. It is so good that the only core skill that you might consider as an alternative, maybe, it is Blood Nova. Everything else can be thrown into a trash bin, absolutely useless. So, similar to Barbarian, this locks Necromancer in a few build options. In particular, I would say in early game Minion Master build with Bone Spear or maybe Nova is much stronger option than anything else. However, unlike Barbarian, gameplay in the early game provided by Necromancer is much more satisfying, and the reason for that is one of the best, if not the best, resource managements. Read it, almost no need to use wet noodle basic skills. In fact, I completely removed it from the board closer to level 50. The Minion Master gameplay goes like that. You get to the next pack and start casting Bone Spear into the enemy's faces. By the time you run out of essence, if the pack is not dead yet, there are plenty of corpses. So instead of using basic skills, you start popping those bodies. Between essence gain from corpse explosions and from skeleton frost mages, you get full in no time and start using core skill again. This feels so much better than what Barbarian gives, and not just feels, it is actually much more effective. As I said, survivability is a bit of a concern. Minions help, but you need to be careful with your positioning because there are not that many tools to save you. Wrapping up my thoughts on Necromancer, I think it is a very good option for alt character. Gameplay is unique in a fun way, builds do not have a lot of variety in early game, but Minion Necro is the most iconic, and it is good to have fun with it. However, I would not recommend going through campaign on the hardcore. Killing those super fat bosses won't be an easy experience. And of course, some hardcore tips for Necro. Minion survivability is priority number 1, so all the passives that help to keep them alive are essential. Use Reapers for warrior slots to generate more corpses, and Ice Mages for mage slots to generate essence and freeze enemies. This combo will give you absolutely amazing resource management really early. For the Golem, I would recommend Blood Golem to distribute part of the damage from you to him for extra survivability. However, Iron Golem with stun could be a good option as well. Put at least 1 point into the Blood Mist, no need to level it up, just keep it as your panic button. You may use it once in 3 hours, which could be considered waste of a slot, but when it is a difference between life and death on hardcore, I think it is absolutely worth it. I would highly recommend upgrading Corpse Explosions to create this Shadow Mist instead, and there are 2 big reasons for that. First, it increases your chances to proc the passive that generates the corpse unlucky hit, and you will be able to swarm battlefield with corpses. And the second, it stacks aspects of disobedience like crazy, providing maximum defense. And for the love of Rathma, use the bloody shield. You may think that 20% chance to block 50% damage is not that good. Well, first of all, it is already 10% defense on average, but more importantly, it is a 20% chance to avoid death when you misplay and some giant baboon hits you with a massive overhead attack that otherwise would send your hero to the halls of valor. Next one near the campfire is a Sorcerer. Sorcerer was the second class I was playing. Sorcerers are very strong in early game. When I jumped on Sorcerer from Barbarian, it felt absolutely legal. Great clean speed there. Toughness, you can get some from the ice barrier. Want mobility? Here's teleport for you. Want self-sustain? There are some sick fire skills passive to help with that. Crowd control? Plenty and in different flavors. Resource management, well, mana regen rate is actually pretty high already, but if you want more, we have some. You have access to everything. Depending on the build, you can get like 80% of Barbarian survivability with like 2 times faster clear speed and keeping enemies in CC. I had the least number of close calls as I was playing Sorcerer, and it was second fastest character 1 to 50. Guess the first one. If I try to pick on Sorcerer from a power perspective in early game, it is when you hit Capstone. When I was leveling all the characters, I did Capstone on 47 and the last 3 levels to 50 I did on T3. This is where clear speed went on a bit of decline, and the worst of all, I don't believe any build but Frost can handle this nicely. So I have some reservation about Sorcerer mid-late game, but it is for another video. It is all reinforced by an absolutely amazing skill tree combined with class-specific feature enchantments. There are so many interactions available early on, so many combos to try. You really feel like you're in a candy shop, and the best part, it is not just a spell of different color, it actually plays different. I managed to make all of those builds viable. Yes, some could be more powerful than the other, but as I said, if the build provides you with 80% of power of meta build, it is okay in my book. So let me walk you through what I have tried before I ended up with my build. I tried a full fire build, great sustain, insane burst, you have a fire shield to get out of sticky situations, and you even can put it into enchantment slot so it triggers automatically when you get a fatal blow with 2 minutes of cooldown. Built-in cheat death? On hardcore? Are you kidding me? I tried a full lightning build, makes you pretty sturdy, great resource management, and you have teleport, great single target damage. To be fair, it is the build I played the least, so I can't comment on it a lot. I tried a full frost build, also sturdy thanks to ice armor, also great resource management, absolutely insane CC. Deep freeze is an amazing tool to save your ass, and ice shards in the enchantment hitting frozen enemies on their own are absolutely insane. I tried mixing all 3 elements. This option sacrifices some damage, but you get all the survivability tools possible, making you extremely tanky. My favorite one ended up being mixing ice and fire to get great CC from ice spells and self-sustain from fire. Sorcerer builds are pretty flexible, so when I had the second enchantment slot open on level 30, I spent 1 point on Fireball to put it into enchantment, making all my ice attacks set enemies on fire, allowing me to benefit from passives that heal me for every enemy burning and increase mana regeneration from burning enemies killed. It's great. Just look at this close call and life regeneration I got from Deep Freeze. And on my way to that, I tried builds with no core skills, builds with 2 core skills where 1 is taken only for enchantment, builds with 3 defense skills, and all that kinda had potential. What I'm trying to say is that it was very fun and rewarding to explore and test different early game Sorcerer builds. Hands down the most diverse and the most fun skill tree of all classes in the game. All of this transpires into a very fun and engaging gameplay, different for every build. Sorcerer, with exception of Fire maybe, has almost no need to use basic skills during leveling. You get to the pack, you unload your spells, pack is dead. By the time you get to the next pack, all your mana is back. Ironically, Frostbolt is one of the core skills that actually doesn't feel so bad. When you have to use it, it chills the enemy, and if it hits the frozen enemy, it explodes and does a bit of AoE damage. Can we have at least a little bit of this fun in Barbarian early game, please? Summing up, Sorcerer is a great class. It is strong offensively and defensively. It has an interesting and diverse skill tree. It promotes fun and engaging gameplay. You really can't go wrong with Sorcerer either as first or alt character on either hardcore or softcore. Tips for hardcore: not much really. Have one panic button, skill tree provides plenty of options, there is no reason not to take at least one. If you choose a fire shield, use it for enchantment. Cheating death every 2 minutes is insane for hardcore. Use skulls for jewelry. It could be tempting to double down on resist since intellect is the primary stat, but armor is a better defensive stat in fact. Try to get some overtime damage to benefit from the aspect of disobedience. Burning is an obvious choice. Blizzard also works very well. I'm not entirely sure how to achieve it in lightning build, I played at least, but I'm pretty sure there is a way. Honestly, I don't know what else to say. Have fun, try different builds, be bold with your builds. There is no class in the game that rewards your experiments with builds more. Going further, we have Rogue. In my experience, it is the fastest clear speed in the early game, period. Not only do they have absolute insane damage output, they also move between packs in the dungeons with phenomenal pace. They also fold bosses in a matter of seconds. This is all supported by very decent resource management with Inner Sight class ability available at level 20. I got Rogue 1 to 50 absolutely solo in about 6.5 hours, which is by far the best time I had. Survivability, on the other hand, is a bit of a concern in Rogue early game. It is not like it is not present. Close combat Rogue has arguably the best self-sustain with healing, 3% on any crit in melee, buttloads of mobility and unstoppable. The problem is, it is all active and it is all in your hands. There is a close to no safeguards from one shot. No fortification, no barriers, no decent damage reduction passives. So you have all the tools to keep your rogue alive. It's not that hard, but if you sneeze at the wrong moment, your character can end up dead very quickly, which is obviously a bit of a concern for hardcore. You absolutely can't go into autopilot mode playing this class. This became even more evident when I hit World Tier 3 on 47. Clear speed still was superior, but god, I had so many close calls. I was dancing with the death till I got better gear until level 49, so the level difference is not that high. Skill tree is very diverse. Most of the skills are very useful and in fact very different from gameplay perspective. Let's take core skills for example. If you want to go melee, you can go Flurry or Twisting Blades. Twisting Blades provide higher single target damage but require an aspect to actually be able to clean up the packs. Where Flurry, while lacking in a single target damage department, provides good cleanup out of the box and has better synergy with healing passive due to the big number of hits. Another option for melee is Barrage. Barrage is very interesting because it can be used in a range and because of spread it will apply status effects from imbuement to larger group of enemies, helping to clean trash packs faster. Or you can fire it at a point blank distance, making all projectiles hit a single target so you can melt down elites and bosses. By the way, Barrage is my favorite one. Rapid Fire is also a viable choice if you want to stay safe in the distance. Even though I ended up with Barrage, I felt like all of those options were viable. And I swear to you, it goes like this with every node in the skill tree. Like 80% of skills are actually very useful. Want to play traps? Sure. Want to combine 2 imbuments? That's gonna work as well. Want to double down on poison? By all means. It is not a bad choice. My peak on this though is that I don't feel like the combination of skills I am choosing matters that much from a power level perspective. I was started throwing random stuff together and it always was okay. While all skills are great on their own, interactions between them didn't feel impactful. It is not necessarily a bad thing because it allows you to play the class as you want, and the build will become more important to fit your playstyle rather than to achieve higher power levels. And if Diablo was a more action-oriented game like Elden Ring, I would say it is the best tree you possibly can get. But if you want the satisfaction of carefully crafted builds with a lot of synergies in it, this is not what early game Rogue can give you. On the other hand, Rogue gameplay is really fun. It is way more active than anything else. You always dash, go to invis, picking on enemies with inner sight markers, applying status effects, jumping from pack to pack, and so on. It is not just effective, it is also very engaging. It feels powerful and fast-paced. And as I said before, it is different based on the skills you choose. Arguably the most fun early game playstyle you can get. Verdict for Rogue: crazy damage, but very punishing if you are careless. Very fast leveling, extremely fun and engaging gameplay. Tips for hardcore: always have 1 or 2 sources of unstoppable. If you get CC'd, there's a good chance you won't survive it. Crit chance is the key to both offense and defense, so for early game it is your primary stat without any doubts. If you're out of energy, repositioning is often not just safer but also more effective than just spamming basic attacks. Don't delay your class quest later than level 20, Inner Sight is extremely helpful for resource management in early game. Never, I'm telling you, never play this class on autopilot mode on hardcore. If you feel like you struggle to keep focused, put the game aside and come back later. Playing on autopilot can kill any class, but it will kill Rogue much faster. And the last but not least is Druid. There's quite a bit to unpack. So, my experience. At first, I tried to play Pulverized build. I started with a full Bear build. And I'm sorry, Bear Druid players, but it felt like a discount Barbarian. While Pulverize itself is smashing, generation of resources for it takes about 1 million years, and if you accidentally missed one of the elites with it, well shit, you will have to wait another 5 seconds before you can finish it off. Because of poor resource management, average DPS is low, and survivability doesn't even reach Barbarian levels. You really need some items and better density to make it work. Then I tried the mixed shapeshifter build with both Wolf and Bear, still maintaining Pulverize. It felt a bit faster without compromising on defense. I think it is the best early game combo for Pulverized shapeshifters, but it still didn't feel particularly good. Then I cheated and went into guides trying to replicate Pulverized build with Storm skills. It was the first time I actually looked up the build during the leveling, but I knew people were talking about it as about one of the stronger builds, so I thought I was doing something wrong. Whatever I tried, the results were underwhelming for an early game. All builds required aspects or items I did not possess, and it led to build just not working. Let me know in the comments if you made Pulverized build work in early game without some special items, and how, because I just failed with it. after all of that, I went back to the build I originally wanted to play, Lightning Storm Druid, and I never looked back. Clear speed of this build is very good. You really need a key passive to have your resource management sorted, so it is a bit of a slower before you get it. Survivability of this build is a bit of a concern. Ability is absent and you don't have a lot of defensive passives to prevent one shot, so it gets scary sometimes on hardcore. Needless to say, I was a bit nervous going to capstone on 47 and farm T3 after. But after the standard procedure of preparing for capstone, upgrading all the items, ensuring I have all required defensive aspects, again, only the basic ones, I realized how wrong I was. This was the easiest last stretch of 1 to 50 of all 5 classes. Yes, it didn't have the survivability of the Barbarian, but it was way safer than Rogue on Necromancer. Damage and CC were outstanding. I really enjoyed those last 3 levels as a Lightning Storm Druid, and I'm pretty excited to play it further. To the skill tree. I think it is a shame that Shapeshifter skills do not open up till mid-game. Tree looked interesting to me and I enjoyed trying new builds with it, so the fact that only a small subset of builds are actually effective is a bit of a bummer. It is designed nicely in the way where you can go nature or shapeshifter route leaning towards one side of subtree, bear or wolf for shapeshifter, storm or earth for nature, or you can try to balance between two. Interactions between skills are present in the tree, and I believe a bit of a balancing could easily elevate enjoyment of building a druid in the early game to the very high standard. But for now, I can't see myself leveling druid 1 to 50 as shapeshifter at all. I already touched on the gameplay, but let's get some of it up. Bear build is a wet noodle, horrendously slow, unsatisfying playstyle that also forces you to watch the bear as 90% of the time. Mixing it with wolf or lightning doesn't make it much better, except it reduces bears as screen time. Lightning Storm build, on the other hand, is squishier, but it is much faster, has better resource management, fun to play, and it looks absolutely epic. Building druids in early game could be very interesting, if not a weird balance of the skills. Skill tree feels interconnected and allows for some good synergies in the build. Whatever build you end up with, use Hurricane. It makes enemies vulnerable, it stacks aspect of disobedience, it works literally in any build. None of the builds I tried were particularly good on bosses, so be careful there. And if you see a butcher, you better use the Scroll of Escape at least till mid-40s. Druid has a lot of sources of fortification, and fortification is a great deal when it comes to survivability. So, whatever build you go, make sure you stack fortification somehow. If you decide to play Lightning Storm Druid as I did, make sure you maintain the charge of Lightning Storm between packs. Early on, Blizzard increased the time charge preserved from 4 to 6 seconds, making it possible to run almost the entire dungeon on full charge, and it is a huge difference. And this is it about Druid. Now, of course, I need to do a tier list because YouTube like tier lists. This was a very long video, so a reminder. This tier list is only about 1 to 50 aka early game experience, and even if your favorite class is low on it, well, who cares as long as you enjoy playing it. I'm going to place my favorite class Barbarian in the B tier, lonely by itself. I love the class and I will very likely be playing it even if Blizzard nerf it to the ground, but I can't deny Barbarian's early game performance is truly abysmal. It is very safe, but is also very unengaging and painfully slow. If you are only starting hardcore and don't have any altars of Lilith or Renown open, I think Barbarian is a very decent option. But if you want an alt character that can go into mid-late game as fast as possible, you won't be very pleased. In A tier, I'm going to place Necromancer and Druid. Both of them can get pretty fast to 50, but both of the fast leveling builds have issues with survivability. Both of their skill trees looks interesting, but in fact have only one actual viable build till you enter mid-late game. I would rate Druid slightly higher for one reason: playing a Druid I had a much easier transition to World Tier 3. Sorcerer and Rogue are going into S tier. I enjoyed building the Sorcerer the most with all the interactions and combos available, while the Rogue was the most fun to play and the fastest to level up. In the scope of hardcore, I probably will give first place to Sorcerer because I felt much safer with it, but if it was softcore, I would go with Rogue in the blink of an eye. And this is it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments what class is your main and what class are you planning to use for season 1. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.